I recently got the following question. How do I make a thin felt from 2 layers of wool without getting any holes in the felt? Now, I know this is a common issue, so I thought it would make sense to make a whole video about it. Now, just off the top of my head, I can see at least 3 reasons why you may be getting holes in your thin felt. One of them, and that would be the main one, is that your layout is irregular. The second one might have to do with the fact that you're laying out on bubble wrap, and we'll get into these in a moment. The last reason, in my opinion, could have to do with the way you're filling your wool. So I think the best way to show you what I mean is to jump in and do a demonstration. Now, if you're having problems with your layout, and by that I mean if your layout is irregular, there can be a couple of different reasons for that. One of them can be that you're working with bad quality wool. What I mean by that is that you can be working with wool that you've had for such a long time that it's matted together. And when you pull it off, this is what happens. So it's not that it doesn't work, but when you pull it off, it's very irregular. As you can see, it's very difficult to have an even layout with it. Now notice the difference between this one and this one. Can you see the difference? So sometimes it's better if you just get rid of your old wool or just use it for something else like needle felting or for just another type of project. If you want to have a nice even layout that you want to use to make a fine felt, it is really important that when you pull off your wool from your wool top, that it just happens in an even way and it just flows so that you can lay it out evenly. You can also have an uneven layout because of the way you're drafting your wool. So if you want to make a thin felt, this is how I recommend you draft your wool. First of all, never work with all this thickness. Divide your wool top into 2 parts or even 3. Like in this case, I would divide it like this. It's about 1/3 of my top. I'd pull it off. And then the next important thing is the way you pull off your fiber. So if you want to make a thin felt, you want to make a thin layout, right? Now, if you want to make a thin layout, remember to always pull off your wool from the very tips like this. This would produce a really nice and a really fine layout. Can you see where I'm pulling my wool from? The very tips of the fiber. Okay, now this would make a really nice and fine layout. Now, if I start by pulling from the ends of my fiber, like I've been doing up till now, and then suddenly I decide to pull it off from here, look at the difference. So this would give me a completely irregular layout. As you can see, here you have it nice, thin and even, and here you have chunks of wool. Okay, so this is extremely important. And of course, what you also need to do is to make sure you don't leave any holes in your layout. Okay, so make sure everything overlays nicely so you never see any holes in your layout, okay? When you finish your layout, check it again, see if there are any uneven spots and add where any wool is missing. So if you don't have chunks of wool in some areas and thinner fiber in others, and if you make sure that there are no holes in your layout, then you're okay. So I've created a quick layout here. These are 4 grams of an extra fine merino wool, so 19 microns. So I have 2 layers here. Each one of them has 2 grams of wool. Now notice that I haven't laid it out on the bubble wrap. When I'm working with a fine layout, I never use the bubble wrap. And the reason is I find that the bubbles from the bubble wrap can create holes in your layout. Even if they don't create holes, they at least influence the shape of the felt. So on the edges and leave marks. So I don't like them. I don't use bubble wrap for a fine layout. I either use a plastic film or some fabric. So this is a synthetic fabric, so it doesn't attach to your fiber. So this is one of the important points. Lay out your fiber on something that is absolutely flat. Avoid bubble wrap at all costs, especially if you work with bubble wrap that has big bubbles. Okay, so the next thing I would like to call your attention to is when you add water to your fiber, avoid using something that splashes a lot of water on your fiber, because this layout is so fragile that it is very easy to create holes if there is just too much water on your fiber suddenly. So for this type of layout, I definitely recommend one of these. I'm going to add my water and soap to my wool. Avoid using too much water. And work with gentle movements. Just push down the fiber and try to avoid aggressive movements that can displace the fiber. You don't want to have anything moving. Okay, we can now lift our netting and be careful. Now, when it comes to your fulling methods, these are also very important for such a fragile layout. Avoid using any fulling methods that are too aggressive. So the best thing for this type of layout, I would say, is sanding. If you're not using your sander, you have a couple of options here. In this case, what I do would be I'd fold my plastic. This way I protect my fiber. Rub for a while. And you can use some soap so that your hands glide on the plastic. Something else that is great for such a fine layout is to do some shaking. Gently at the beginning. And what you can also do while you're at it is lift your layout and check if you see any holes, because you could definitely correct any holes. I don't have any holes in the fiber, so I'm just going to go on. So I've been doing this for a couple of minutes, about 10 minutes, and I'm just going to open it up to see what it looks like. And I can see that the fiber is starting to felt. So it's a very, very light pre-felt. There hasn't been any shrinkage yet, as you can see, but the fibers have started attaching to each other. So what you can do next is you can start rolling. I'm going to use a bamboo mat for that. My piece on it. You can use a core if you want to. I'm going to try to do this without a core at the beginning. Don't make it too tight or you'll get wrinkles on the piece. And just go on rolling. Remember to change the direction of the rolling. That's really important. Otherwise, you only get shrinkage in one direction. So just turn it clockwise and go on rolling. Turn it in all four directions and then remember to flip it and do the same on this side. Now and again, open up your plastic and check on the fiber. If there are any wrinkles, remember to flatten everything out, okay? So I'll just go on rolling and I'll come back to you when it's ready. And here is my sample. So this is how much it shrank. And I've rolled it up in my tea towel as well to finish it. Now, of course, you can't see through like I can, but anyway, as you can see, there are absolutely no holes in it. So I have nice straight edges, and it's a thin felt, it's even all over, and there are no holes in it. So if you've been having problems with holes in your thin felt, I suggest you make a sample like this. Try the ideas I gave you, so watch out for your layout. Make it thin and even. Avoid laying out on the bubble wrap, and use non-aggressive fulling methods. And then please share your results with me. I'd love to know how it went.